Why, hello there! Would you like to learn some more about chess and how to play it? Well, then do I have the thing for you. This Grandmaster himself knows actually one very good tactic that he can always pull off consistently, and that is the surrender.
Unorthodox hick.
So yeah, basically don't listen to me when it comes to chess, but perhaps listen to CDI, because CDI did have a very kind of cool little simulation game in Sargon Chess, which was, I think it was actually one of the earlier games released for it, made in 1990 even. And this game allows you to play against the CPU or against a friend, of course, or just have the CPUs battle it out. And it offers a very cool and rather quick tutorial section that can get kinda into depth, and it's kinda neat. So I figured, just to preserve that, I will show that off and you can just see what that was like, and maybe if you are interested in chess, perhaps still even learn something. Since I am not much of a chess player myself, I don't feel like I can really objectively give a very good opinion on the game. In regards on how to judge its skill level and its actual gameplay, I'm just not knowledgeable enough in the field to really do that. Of course, I can give some pointers on what the game is actually like in its presentation, which is kind of okay. It's kind of neat. There's different pieces you can select and different boards. One thing I don't like is that the default 3D camera angle is way behind the pieces, so you have this rather nasty thing happening where bigger pieces might obscure the ones before it. Luckily, there's also a 2D option, which really helps, make it much more easier to see the depth. But yeah, the default angle should have been much higher up. Like it's really like you're almost sitting very low below, like on eye level on the board, and it's just not good, I find. And I'm not really sure why they even did that, because it doesn't help in any way. Because also now the selection on the board is a bit tougher, and also that's another odd thing. Like it feels like the game has not showing a cursor, but it kind of feels like you're controlling an invisible cursor. Sometimes you push a button and nothing happens. The piece is not selected, or the square that's on, and sometimes you push it and it selects the second one over. So it's very finicky in that regard. You can get used to it, but it's not very precise. Unfortunately, a lot of early CDI titles had this issue. And I think it has to do with their just not showing the cursor, but there is like an invisible cursor, which is just an unfortunate thing. It would have been better if they would have just shown the cursor. And there is a decent amount of options in this title as well. As I stated, you could play with a friend or against the CPU. What's really cool is you can adjust the board layout, so you can set up your own scenarios and puzzles to play around with and figure your way out of, which is really cool. Recreate some classic situations and play from there. So that's really nice. That's in there. Kind of basic for chess games nowadays, but back then, that was a feature that was still kind of neat. There are some skill levels for some reason, and I don't know. The box actually states there are 16 skill levels. However, in the game, there's only novice, beginner, and expert, nothing in between. So I'm not really sure where that number on the box comes from. It might have to do with the timer you can set for the CPU. It's thinking timer. That goes from 5 seconds to 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes, I think. So maybe that also makes it a bit more difficult if you give it more time, but I'm not entirely sure. There is some music in the game, but it's very limited. Like if you move a piece, there is a little jingle playing, Or you can choose to have Sargon talk to you at that point when there is a move made, or you can just put it on silence, which is probably preferred by most chess players instead of, having repeated little quips thrown at you. And then there is the tutorial section, which is decently extensive, but what I really like about this one is that they chose to have this Sargon, the warlord theme for the game, and they kind of use that also into the tutorial, and not to a point where you are constantly bombarded with references to Sargon, but no, they just treat the chess game as a game or as a proper battle. And just having that little metaphor throughout the tutorial, in my opinion, makes it just a bit more interesting, and it's really cool how that's interwoven in that and makes it a bit more dynamic than just talking about chess the game. And they do it in a very neat way where it's not like actually invading the game itself or the speech itself. The script is very tight. It does very quickly explain what it needs to explain. It just uses some words to make it a bit more interesting, I find. Anyway, enough about my ramblings. I'm just gonna let it play out and have you see what it was actually like. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care. The muzzle.
Take heed, novice. I'll slaughter you if you shrink from combat.
The ancient game of chess is played by two opponents on a checkered board as shown. Each side has 8 squares alternating in color. The board is placed so that both players have a white square in the lower right-hand corner. The opposing armies are equal in number. They rise in a hierarchy of 16 pieces, beginning in the lowest rank of 8 pawns, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, 1 queen, and 1 king. Here we see the traditional pre-battle formation of the pieces. The kings and queens are placed opposite each other, with the white queen starting in the white square, and the dark queen claiming the black square, an arrangement known as queen on color. The object of the game is to checkmate your enemy's king, that is, attack the opposing king and prevent his escape. The white army is always given the first move into war, and thereafter the opponents alternate turns. Each player moves only 1 piece a turn and may never have 2 pieces occupying the same square. The only time a piece may enter into an occupied square is to take it over from the opposition, capturing an enemy piece. One is not necessarily compelled to capture an opposing piece unless it is the only legal move left possible. All pieces, save the knight, may only move along unblocked paths. The mounted knight is able to hurdle over other pieces of either army. The king is the most important piece. When he falls, the army disbands and is defeated. The main objective in chess is to assault and trap your enemy's king, while maintaining protection for your own. As shown, the king may move in any direction, left, right, forward, backward, or along any diagonal, but only 1 square per move. The king may slay an enemy by moving onto an adjacent occupied square. Though the fall of the queen may not mean the end of the empire, it means the loss of the most powerful entity in the fighting force. She is able to fly in any direction, left, right, or diagonally, and unlike the king, as far as she likes. She captures enemy warriors by moving into their space. The rook's power of mobility is second to the queen's. He may only move any number of squares vertically or horizontally, but may not move diagonally. Here we see the white rook capture the black queen. The mitred bishop may move any number of squares, but is limited to diagonal directions. Each army is blessed with 2 bishops, who divide their callings between each other. One of each army remains solely on the black squares, and the other never leaves the light. Pictured here we have a white bishop ensnaring a black rook. The knight's movement is maverick to the game in that he is able to hurdle over enemies and comrades alike without being blocked. He moves in an L-shaped path which makes him quite valuable in the thickness of the foray. He is only able to knock off the opponent he lands upon and not those which he has jumped over, as is shown here where the white knight captures the black bishop and a black pawn is left to remain in the thick of the battle. A pawn dutifully moves forward and may never retreat. In the initial attack he may move 2 squares, but thereafter moves across the field a square at a time. If a pawn moves only 1 square on his opening move, he forever forfeits the 2-square surge forward. A pawn cannot capture an opponent who is directly in his path. He takes his captures by moving diagonally forward. As shown here, a white pawn is blocked by a black pawn, but may move forward diagonally and take out the black knight. Whenever a king is threatened with a capture by an enemy piece, he is held in what is termed check. Here the white bishop and the white knight conspire to obliterate the black king. When you attack the opposing king, you must be cautious about protecting your own king. If your king is placed in mortal danger, you have just 3 ways of saving him from peril. First, consider capturing your attacker if he is not well protected. However, a direct attack may put you in deeper jeopardy. Here, the white queen puts the black king in check, but leaves herself undefended. The black king is able to turn the attack around by capturing her himself. A second approach to the problem would be to move your king out of the zone of fire. The white army's next move has a bishop putting the king back into check again. The white bishop is protected from being captured, so the black, using his only option, must escape by dodging 1 square to the left. The third possibility would be to block your enemy's attack by placing a bodyguard between your king and his attacker. This move is particularly effective if the buffering piece offers a direct threat to your enemy attacker. The white force continues the assault by putting the black king in check again. None of the black army is in any position to attack the white castle. An evasive move from the white rook would only bring the black king into the white bishop's area of control, and it is against the rules of warfare to move into check. The black king calls upon the rook to protect him, but alas, this heroic gesture becomes its last, for the black rook is exposed to assault and capture by the white rook. If your king cannot capture his assailants, evade, or interpose, he has been checkmated and has lost the game. Here the white rook holds the black king hostage in check. He can neither capture nor evade the rook, and there is no mate able to save him. White has therefore checkmated the black. Occasionally, a player is not in check, but can make no legal move. This is known as a stalemate. Both sides respectfully retire their weaponry and end the game. An example of this is shown with the black king on the back rank and abutted by a white pawn. The white king is following directly behind this pawn. The black king is not in check and can make no legal move, for every adjacent square is controlled by the white army. Thus, the war ends in a stalemate. En passant is a special move for capturing a pawn with another pawn. The phrase en passant is French for in passing. This occurs when a player moves his pawn 2 squares on its first move to avoid abduction by an opposing pawn. As demonstrated here, if the black pawn moves only 1 square, it can be eliminated by the white pawn's diagonal move. If the black pawn uses his right to move 2 squares on its initial move, he can still be captured by the white pawn via the law of en passant. However, if the white pawn does not take advantage of this easy capture, the threatened black pawn is safe from capture by en passant for the remainder of the game. A pawn is not necessarily fated to the lowest rank for its entire tour of duty. It has the potential of rising to the post of any fighter, with, of course, the exception of the king. It is awarded this promotion after struggling across the field to the end of the board. It may become any rank, however, it is usually transformed into another queen for the protection of the king. Therefore, it is possible for the king to have a number of queens, more than 2 rooks, and so forth. Thus, the reincarnated pawn now assumes all the powers of his new rank and is expected to use them to the fullest. Here we have a former pawn crowned as a new queen. Castling is a special move that allows the player to move his king and a rook on one turn. The object of castling is to protect your king by putting him in a safer square and to place your rook in a position to wield more power. A player may castle only once in a game, and then only under specific conditions. The first condition is that the king and rook have not moved at all from their starting positions. Secondly, the spaces between them must be clear of any pieces. Castling cannot be used as a strategy to move into, out of, or through check. The way to castle is for the king to move toward the rook 2 squares. The same rook goes around the king and flanks him on the adjacent square toward the center of the board. With all of the conditions in order, one may castle in either direction, resting on the king's side or the side of the queen. Some pieces have more value than others because of their ability to control more squares on the board. Whenever one considers a piece exchange, determine the value of the fighters to see if an exchange would be worthwhile. Here is a popular guide to see the point value of all the pieces other than the king. This scenario illustrates. In this problem, the white rook places the black king in check. If the black king is incapable of capturing the rook or interposing one of his men, his only option is to escape. However, by saving his own royal skin, his bishop is exposed to an attack by the white rook. He wisely evades to a square where he can protect the 3-point bishop. Black's thinking being, surely the white will not take my bishop with his rook, for if he does, I will swoop down upon his rook with my king, and this exchange would not be in his favor. I would have a 5-point rook, and he would have merely my 3-point bishop. However, the white rook captures the black bishop. Clearly, white does not understand the point system. As expected, the black king falls upon the white rook and wins a 5-point to 3-point exchange. But before the black king has had a chance to gloat, the white bishop has responded by taking a 1-point pawn and putting the king in check. Furthermore, the white bishop has simultaneously attacked an unprotected rook of the black force. Black is devastated. He can neither capture the threatening white bishop nor interpose its line of attack. Once again, he is forced to evade and abandon a doomed rook. The white bishop captures the black rook and gains an overwhelming material advantage. Here is a breakdown in terms of points of the last exchange. In chess, a 9-5 point spread can be devastating. Black's chances for victory look fairly muddied now. The United States Chess Federation recognizes 2 forms of chess notation: algebraic and description. This tutorial will, at times, use the descriptive format. This notation system makes use of the initial board arrangement to identify squares and describe piece movement. The files are described by the piece that occupies the lead square, and the rows are described by numbers. Since there are 2 bishops, knights, and rooks, their squares must be further identified by whether they are on the king side or the queen side of the board. For example, this square is called Queen's Bishop 4, whereas this one is King's Bishop 4. Piece movement is described by naming the piece and describing the square to which it is moved. As illustrated here, this movement would be described as Bishop to Queen's Knight 5. In the beginning, the objective is to gain control of the center of the board. Here we see that black and white have both played the best initial move, pawn to king 4. This beginning move helps in the battle to obtain the central square while simultaneously opening avenues for the queen and bishop. But what should the white do now? Let's discuss the white army's options. What about developing the queen? Moving the queen this early in the game is premature. To bring the queen out in an aggressive move like this would expose her to an immediate attack from the black knight, forcing a hasty retreat and allowing the black force to develop another piece. It is best to have other pieces maneuvering about before developing the queen. As the strongest piece, it is the choicest target of the enemy and will have to lose much time scurrying about to protect herself. This is a respectable opening for the bishop. The main disadvantage is that it violates the basic principle of developing knights before bishops. The far-ranging bishop has a greater choice of squares to which it can travel. Why not wait for the contours of the position to become more sharply defined before committing this powerful piece? Now let us consider possible pawn moves. There is thought behind a move to queen's bishop 3. It prepares a pawn push to queen's 4. The major shortcoming of this maneuver is that it blocks the most natural developing square of this knight. Speaking of the knight, knight to king's bishop 3 is a strong opening. Here the white knight develops centrally, giving the white army the early advance. Black is immediately put on the defensive by having to protect its pawn from the white knight. Here are some helpful hints for strong openings. Aggressively try to gain control of the center. Move your middle pawns early, leaving the flank side pawns where they are. Play aggressively. The old adage, the best defense is a good offense, is most applicable to chess. By mounting effective assaults on your opponent, you muddle him in his attempts to take the offense. Send your bishops and knights into the field early. Castle early. Don't attempt to checkmate the opposition too early in the game, for it is unlikely to work. Consider these time-tested tactics. Pieces in the center of the board have more mobility than those on the sides. Optimize mobility by focusing on the center. Every time the enemy makes a move, analyze the battlefield. Is he threatening to capture any of your pieces? Is his king in a less secure position than before? Remember, your opponent has a plan too. Try to foil his secret agenda. Take advantage of forking opportunities. A piece may attack more than one enemy at a time. Conduct X-ray attacks on your adversary's undefended pieces, drawing a line of fire to the enemy's king and through the king to an undefended piece can prove to be a devastating tactic. If your opponent is incapable of either capturing his assailant or interposing another piece, his king is forced to flee, and the undefended piece is now doomed to capture. Here is an example of forking, where the white queen's move to here simultaneously puts both of the black rooks in jeopardy. Under this attack, one of the rooks will perish. This is resolved by white using an X-ray attack. The white rook moves to the opposite edge of the board, abandoning his pawn, for the black rook strikes and captures it. There is method to this seeming folly. For now, the white rook moves again, forcing the black king to flee and expose the black rook to a definite capture. The white rook, of course, takes the black rook, leaving black's king all alone to face defeat. Now, let's take a hard look at strategic methods. Rooks belong on open files. Avoid isolated pawns. Maximize mobility. Rooks are most often strongest on the 7th rank. In this situation, the white rook seizes the open file here. No matter what maneuver the black force makes, the white rook may move its position to the 7th rank and capture by any variation. Although bishops and knights are nearly equal in power and value, the bishop has an edge with its longer range of mobility. This situation well illustrates the truth of this. Here the black army has many weak white squares. The white knight may jump to king 6 and threaten both the black queen and her rook. Black's only move to prevent either loss is to play bishop takes knight, capturing the white knight. The white queen is able to fell the white-squared black bishop, thereby giving the white-squared white bishop more power. Black's pawns are weak because they are isolated. White exploits this alienation by attacking with his king at queen's bishop 4. Though the black king may move to protect his pawn, white can ensure a pawn advantage by forwarding this pawn. Whatever black does from here will only worsen his position. The ultimate objective is to checkmate your opponent. These simple techniques are often useful in achieving victory. Block your opponent king's escape paths. Force the king into the corner. Defend the attacking piece. Here the white king denies his opponent king an escape access on the 7th rank. White need only control the 8th rank and checkmate black. White's rook moves with ease into the 8th rank for a checkmate. Despite white's material superiority, it must still use everything possible to checkmate black. The white bishop checks black like this. The white king and black squared bishop limit the black king to the corner square, forcing king to king's rook 1. White's black squared bishop delivers the final blow.
Next time, you might try concealing your vulnerability.